Hello again, people. Let's look at here. We've got some charts right here. Now, basically, what we're talking about right here is this wonderful chart. This basically this is like the Swiss francs here. Okay, so what happened is see how the Swiss francs just keep going up and up in value. It's just amazing. But then we have this red zone. See, the red zone is kind of interesting, which ends up being a point where there's a $1.2 billion settlement. That comes right here. See, it's right here. But now see what happens is after there's a settlement, then there's a considered restabilization and new faith shown in the Swiss franc. See, a new stabilization because they got rid of a potential liability problem. Now, the liability problem deals with this other statistic right here, because here's World War II. This is when all these other currencies dumped off the world map, and no one basically wanted them, So we end up with the green line here. The green line is basically the Swiss franc. So how is it possible that the United States dollar was rock solid worldwide? It just became rock solid. We became the big Roach Motel for gold in the world, but we were rock solid, say. But for some strange reason, the Swiss franc, a landlocked country in Europe, somehow has a dollar, a piece of currency that keeps accelerating upward, being worth more than the US dollar. I want you to think about that. A country smaller than the United States has their currency propel itself along a stable line, well, virtually stable line, as the United States decides to say, no, we're freezing our currency. And see, it's all stable. Then at a certain point, which is about 1930, something starts happening. See, the United States currency is still being set on a straight line, and other currencies around the world, boom, this is crash and burn big time. Just, boom, everything's just going down. Everyone else's currency is losing. And the big black dotted line, that's the U.S. currency. Okay, so, but here we have the anomaly. And the anomaly is the Swiss franc. How is one of the smallest countries in the world? How is their dollar going up in value? Because 1935. Look at this, zips goes from 1930 up to 1935, and then it's steadily climbing. Different curve level, but it's considered somewhat steady, because people are like, is that amazing? There's a war on. It's 1940 right here, 1940, and then in 1945, and it's all stable, okay? And then we have another way of looking at it, where their currency in 1940, right here, see, right here, 1940, here's their currency again, and then boom, look at their currency. It's just going to go up, 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 and then all of a sudden they settle out of court, and then boom, up it goes again and again. How is this possible? How is it possible that the Swiss currency continuously keeps growing, being worth more and more and more? What is the solution to this mathematical anomaly? Well, fairly simple, most people say. All the money being looted from Europe, was going to Switzerland. And Germany was buying product from Spain and other countries, and they had to pay them. And basically, Switzerland was like, Switzerland had to. Well, why did Switzerland give them the money? The funny thing is, Switzerland actually said, Germany said, we want you to give us a bunch of money. They said, go fish. What? Yeah, go fish. you know, are you kidding? We've got all of Europe surrounded. Go fish. By the way, did I mention that Switzerland is crazy? Did I mention this part? Yeah, everybody in Switzerland has a machine gun. Yeah, people in Switzerland are crazy, man. They're not going to listen to anybody's crap. So so you had Germany like, well, how if we just decide to come in your country and take it? And they looked at the Germans and says, bring it on, man. Let's do this. Oh, yeah, buddy. Come on, man. Yeah, let's do this. And the Germans were like, pause. Wait a minute. Every last one of them has a machine gun and is crazy. Okay. Guys, what do you think? We just go in and take over Switzerland. Guys are like, well, let's look at the we'll look at the tactical table, but I think we already know how that works out. How's that work out? Well, come over here. We'll show you the tactical table. First of all, this is all a heavily mountain terrain, and it's just full of all kinds of trees. Okay, what does that mean? Minimum casualties our way, never less than, say, 20 to 1. What? Yeah, they're really good snipers. Ain't one of them that don't have a gun. So the guys are saying, you're saying the minimum's 20 to 1. It says, yeah, that's about the minimum. Maximum maybe 60 to 1, 80 sometimes. 80? It's just, you kidding? No, guys, we all agree. That's about right, So the German guy's asking the other Germans. He says, "Okay, what does that mean?" He says, "Well, see, this is a unique area. This is really, really rough terrain, And we figure they got easily 1.2 million guys. 1.2 million guys. Yeah, so we could probably pull it off if we could get a hold of maybe, I don't know, 27 million troops. 27 million troops? We used a fraction of that to take over all of Europe, and we're going after the Russians, and they're like, well, it's really tough terrain. Again, they all know how to use guns. They're going to take the high ground. They're going to be hiding behind trees, and as we come through on the roads and the passes, it'll be a slaughter. Yeah, they'll just mow us down. So the German guy says, well, that's the only possible plan. And he looks over, the other guys all kind of look at each other and say, well, you could bluff. You could try to bullshit them. Hey, maybe they'll surrender, but I wouldn't count on it. They look over the other guys. You think so? Yeah. That's about right. Yeah. I mean, you could try it, So the German guy goes back to the Switzerland. He says, okay, look, we got easily 14 million guys, and we can get maybe another 20 million. Yeah, we're just going to do this, So if you don't want to surrender and turn it all over to us, we're going to come in with these no matter what. And the Swiss said, well, it's like this. If you actually do that, the way this works out, we got 1.2 million people armed right now. And we're really good snipers. But, if you want to bring it in like that, you see the way it works out, we're like the world's biggest aircraft carrier. You see, although it's mostly mountains, we got a couple of great places to bring aircraft in and land them. It's just really wonderful. And you'd never be able to shut those down. So, yeah, we just call up the Americans and the British. We'll go with them. Yeah, we'll invite them in, and they can come right in here to the heart of all of this and reinforce everything and bring in, I don't know, 15, 20 million troops. Because you'd never be able to shut our landing areas down before they, could bring in, I don't know, 5, 8 million more troops to help relieve things. So the German guy says, Well, it's the wrong decision. Look, I'm going to go back. I'll go back out of courtesy one more time and see if I can cut a better deal for you. I'll be back, So so basically they leave and somebody else comes back and says, "Hi, I'm with the Germans. When I'm the last guy." Yeah, it didn't work out real well for him. Yeah, he's not with us anymore. Apparently there was a misunderstanding. Oh, a misunderstanding, yeah. A misunderstanding. Well, he seemed to be really upfront about y'all's gonna invade us. Oh no, that was a misunderstanding. Yeah, he's dead now. Yeah, we never told him to do that. Yeah. Yeah, he's dead. We shot him. Apologized for his attitude. And they're like, okay. And says, well, then why are we talking here? Well, we want to do some business. We got some really neat antiques, and we'd like to bring some gold and silver and do some banking with you. Can we talk about doing business? And the Swiss guy's like, hold on a minute. He turns around and 7 out of 10 guys said, no. And yet 3 out of 10 say, hey. If they want to bring gold and put it in our bank, fine. Yeah, we'll just have troops all around the roads when they do it. They'll have to behave themselves. But yeah, if they want to come in and do business, yeah. So that was it. At that point in time, the Germans decided to do a trust deal. And that was it. Switzerland was a real big deal. Switzerland was considered neutral, and they were bringing in gold, silver, artifacts, paintings, antiques, and then they were flying them back out. They were flying them. They were driving them in, and then they were flying them out to Spain, and from Spain they were shipping them all over the world. So yeah, that's about it on the story. That guy went back to Germany and told them how things were going and laid everything out. And a bunch of guys came in and says, "Hey, this guy's a dummy. He never should have played things that way. He just gambled with us, doing business with these people." Some other guy said, "Yeah, take this idiot out and just shoot him. Just shoot him. Make a photograph, and we'll send somebody else with a photograph and explain that guy wasn't authorized to say what he said, and we're sorry. That was in no way our intent." So the guy says, "Are you sure you want to do that?" Says, "Are you kidding? We can't take that country over. Not, it'd take us a year at least." And it'd never work. The British and Americans would fly in resources, and it would never end. And then they would be bringing in resources in the middle of our body. The middle of Europe, they would be coming in sniping from the most opportune positions. And we would be taking the heaviest possible losses you could imagine. The guy says, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, advanced territorial positioning, okay?" So that's kind of historically, that's kind of about it. Well, I never read that part. Oh, well, there's a theoretical jump there a bit, a little fragment here, a little fragment there. Sooner or later, I'm fairly positive you'll have a couple historians come out with some more juicy little tidbits that pretty much will about spell that out. Let's just call it close enough for government work, okay? So yeah, at this point, it's a piece of history some people don't understand. So what ends up happening is the Germans found plenty of people to do business with, and these other people were like, "You guys have an awful lot of stuff. Where did that come from?" "It's our stuff." "Yeah, but that's an awful lot of stuff." So there's guys going, "Well, I mean," and the guys that turn around and look at him and they go, and the guy tap on the desk and tap on the desk. And, well, what would be a better handling percentage? What do you want? And the guy said, "That much, huh?" Eh. So yeah, they kind of did the deal there. They kind of knew better, and they did it anyhow. Well, some of them did that. I mean, they came in. They had people. What's going on? Well, they're coming in. They're peaceful. We've got snipers on both sides of the mountains. These people, we got the drop on them. They're coming in for business, and we've always been in business to be in business. So they stayed in business, and yeah, they did the deal. So they made a lot of money. They made a whole lot of money. So this explains the entire anomaly of why the Swiss franc just kept skyrocketing against everybody else's. It has to do with a little guy by the name of William Tell. I'm serious. Yeah. He was a brilliant archer. Yeah, he really was. He told everybody, "Look, I'm a brilliant archer," and they're like, "Oh, yeah, really? Yeah. We want to do business and take care of stuff." Oh, right. Why should we trust you? We're not sure you're brilliant. We don't even know if you can fight. And the guy's like, "Hey," tells his little boy, he says, "I want you to go down there about 300 yards. Yeah, just stand out the tree. Put the piece of fruit on your head." And the kid go run down and put the fruit. He goes, "I can barely see down there." "Hey, let me show you. Let me show you how dangerous I am. Watch." "What are you doing?" Whack. All of a sudden it's like, oh, he shot that, man, he shot that fruit right off the kid's head. 300 yards? Oh, okay, he's dangerous. And the guy says, "Well, look. This is about business and about being smart. Let's just get along." So, yeah, because of that guy, yeah, he ended up turning these people into super freaks in a belief system that basically, so yeah, he's a hero. He turned everybody into super freaks, and they just have this incredibly defendable piece of territory, and everybody has guns and machine guns and scopes and stuff like that. It's just, I mean, what do you do with 14 million people that all have guns and can shoot a piece of fruit off your head at 300 yards? Think about that for a moment.